Are you thinking about buying a used motorcycle?
Take all my money!
But don't want to get hosed? Ha ha! Take a beat and stop. Instead of being a freaking idiot,
I like it a lot.
just don't. Set aside these few minutes and tune in.
If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Because I want to share with you how you can avoid overpaying for a used motorcycle and avoid the common pitfalls of millions of used motorcycle shoppers around the world. I'll also show you how and why I buy motorcycles for no more than $500, but a little more on that later. I'm making this video so you can avoid getting stuck with an absolute
Piece of shit. Stupid piece of shit.
with a sick paint job, albeit, but you probably paid way more than you should have because some jackoff knows what he's got. So don't let her pretty looks get you set up with the herpes of motorcycles. And that's gonna have you drowning in buyer's remorse and a lifetime prescription of Valtrex. So in this video, I'm gonna cover how I set my budgets, the sites I use for searching for deals, how I avoid overpaying, and how to negotiate that deal. I think you'll be especially surprised at how I avoid overpaying. But I've been buying, building, and manufacturing aftermarket parts for motorcycles for over 20 years. And I bought dozens of bikes, and I've learned a thing or two about this game the hard way. That shit sucked. So, stay tuned to learn about that stuff. Expectations. So here's kind of how this goes. If you spend $500 on a bike, you can expect to drop 3 to 5K into it to get it right. You spend 3 to 5K on a bike, you might drop 500 into it to get it right. Now, I'm not a scientist per se, but this is kind of the unwritten rule. Now, there's variations and exceptions, yes. But if you're not prepared to drop cash for work or you can't do the work on your own, one of those options ain't for you. So let's get right into it here with the budget. Now, don't worry, I'm not gonna go, what's that guy's name? Dave Ramsey on your ass. But if you don't have 5K for the bike you want, wait, be patient and save your pennies.
The life's expensive, TJ. It's hard to make it in these cold, hard streets.
Man, I know a lot of dudes who aren't rich and they manage to be smart with their money and afford a good bike and good gear. Now, for starters,
Be a man.
cancel your OnlyFans subscription, stop eating out, stop buying dumbass shit like fucking Funko Pops and creepy Labubu's and gross Dubai chocolate. Hell, dump your girlfriend for a few months. That's a 4K savings minimum. But don't you worry, man. When she sees the clapped out Harley you just bought, she'll come running back. The truth is, buying a bike will actually cost you a lot more than you think, because unlike cars, you gotta buy other shit. If you buy a car, you just jump right in with flippy floppies and shorts and a banana, and you're off. For a bike, you need gear. Minimum 4 helmets, boots, jacket, gloves, road tools, riding glasses, tall socks, flannels, etc. And you think that jacket is the last jacket you're gonna run? Nope. You're gonna realize it chafes your nipples over 70 miles an hour in the winter, so you're gonna need another one. That didn't happen to me. If I have 6K and I'm gonna buy a cruiser, I'll use 5K for the bike and 1K for gear at a minimum. And please, don't skip gloves. Shaving your palms on pavement sucks. And I'm not gonna come help you wipe your butt when your hands are healing up. I saved that surface for the homies. Now, when it comes to this budget, the budget can actually change with different bike uses. For example, if you buy an ADV bike, you may need another 4K in panniers, brush guards, ultralight camping equipment, lighting upgrades, the Bluetooth helmet, the GPS. That's just all so you can tell your friends you went full overland twice on that 2-mile gravel road with a 3-degree grade. It's important to be realistic about what you need with the bike, not just the bike itself. Next is criteria. Know what you want before you shop. Establish what you want out of the bike. Do you want MPG? Do you want power? Are you just looking for cool sounds? Maybe you want reliability, or you need hauling power for 2-up. Obviously, looking cool is the first priority for everyone. Now, if you want MPG, get a newer bike, lower miles. You want power for 2-up? Look for larger displacement bikes with room for 2 people. You want to ride dirt? Well, guess what? You need something that's designed for dirt with capable rubber and the correct riding position. Now, if you're looking for a commuter bike, which a lot of people are, find something comfortable yet nimble. Basically decide in this whole process what you're asking of the 2-wheeled machine, and find the type of bike that matches that best. Now, yes, bear in mind, something like a dual sport bike can be used for commuting, but also for dirt with dual sport tires. But a sport bike is not going to be suited to ripping up the Rubicon. Okay? Do some research. Make sure that bike can take you where you want to go. If you buy a sport bike, get invited on a poker run to Vegas, your back is going to be killing you from riding in the fetal position on a Hayabusa all day in the desert. Now, if you don't know exactly what you want the bike to do or what's important to you,
I don't know.
you may wind up buying a bike that doesn't suit your preferences. So avoid that and determine what's important to you first. Then find the bike that fits that criteria. Next up, and that's the actual search for the bike. But I really recommend you don't go to this stage yet until you've really got a good foundation with your expectations, your budget, and the criteria. But let's get into the searching part. So let's talk about where and how I personally start shopping online. I suggest using Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or OfferUp, and you can just start looking for a bike or hit up the Brew Forum forum at tjbrutalcustoms.com where you can actually sell or use bikes. Now, I use these platforms because I can search locally or a little farther away, and I can communicate with sellers pretty easily. They have a very high concentration of used bikes, and the platforms allow sellers to post a number of images, which helps me find what I'm looking for. Here is a big no-no for using these sites.
No.
Don't try and negotiate over the ad or in the chat.
Be a man.
All negotiations should be done in person.
She wants a heck of 2 roof lights, the stylish house frame furniture, and the scar cushions. It's a fair deal. Take it.
But I'll do a little more on that later for you. Now, there's stuff like cycle traders and online marketplaces. Sure, you can see a much broader offering across the whole country, but I'm personally more comfortable with actually seeing a bike in person. And Marketplace, OfferUp, and Craigslist, they do allow for a little more personal shopping space. And I get it though. There's a lot of scammers out there on sales platforms, but keep watching. I'm going to teach you a few tricks to make sure you don't get scammed. Now we're going to move on to how I determine market values so I don't get screwed. And I did say values plural because there are essentially 3 different values to every bike. The first value I look at is full market value. That's what the bike could be worth in its best condition. Pretty much new. That's the maximum idiots might pay for that bike.
There you go. Thank you, sir. There you go. There you go.
To sell a used bike at this top price is absolutely fucking bonkers insane. Attempting to get this new price usually takes a long time to find the idiot that will overpay, and it requires a seller who's pretty much unemployed, so they're willing to do 500 showings and test rides and all the tire kickers to get those few extra dollars or not get their pride hurt. Now in this case, it's when a stubborn, delusional seller meets the rare, stupid buyer.
Crikey! Stand back, John. Have a go at the size of this beauty.
Let's see if we can sell him a fat tire bike. Dude, never pay this top dollar price. You see a guy with a listing that's been up for 969 days and it still says no lowball offers, he is clearly overpriced. The only variation to this is that he has an insanely collectible bike. The next value is fair market value. This is the price most people are paying for a bike in good condition, and thus determining what people are finding fair. Bikes usually sell in less than 30 days if they are priced accordingly in major metropolitan areas. Now, maybe in a smaller town that might be different due to sheer buyer demand. Less population means a smaller pool of buyers, and that means less demand, which translates to longer listing times and quite often, and usually the case is, lower prices. And the final value is condition adjusted market value. This is where I buy bikes. It's the fair market value, less what it takes to get the bike into good condition. And this is the valuing method we'll be using as our benchmark when we talk about value in this video. Now you might ask yourself, why don't I just use KBB and call it a day? They have prices for vehicles. Bro, stay off KBB. KBB, Kelley Blue Book, for those not in the know, does not take into account a number of factors that play a big part in buying a used vehicle. KBB does not take into account the condition of the bike, market fluctuations, regional market differences, seller and buyer preferences, how long the bike's been sitting, what hasn't been done to it. I mean, shit, man. In the Midwest, a bike might go for $500, but in California, same bike goes for $3K. So stay off KBB, do your own research like you're doing now, and look at actual local pricing. So how do we do that? We'll get started right now. First, I establish the high end. This method is establishing the most this bike will be worth aside from any insane upgrades, okay? Full market value, essentially. This helps you establish your high end and only really applies to bikes that are still actively being sold new from the manufacturer. For example, if you're looking for a Sportster, and Harley still makes that Sportster, then you can go see the price of a new one on Harley's website. So you wouldn't pay that price for a used one. This doesn't account for insane collectability. For instance, let's say you find Elvis Presley's 56KH model. You ain't paying a used bike price for that thing, okay? You'll be paying what I call a collector's price. So we're not talking about this mythical unicorn realm of bike buying today. We're focusing on real world bikes that you can afford and ride the piss out of. Now, if the manufacturer no longer makes and sells the model, then you would go to the sites I shared with you earlier to establish those high-end prices. Next, you will establish your low end. Identify the oldest, shittiest condition models up for sale, the piles of crap, and see what they're generally listed for, only observing the lowest of the low prices. Now you've kind of got your low end. This is pretty easy to establish, however, yes, be aware of freaking nutcases. Value training. This is my absolute favorite method for avoiding overpaying for a bike. Here's how it works. You know if a burger is too expensive because you've observed their prices on menus many times. You could probably identify the fair price of a burger within just a few dollars due to your incredible awareness of the whole fair market value for a burger. Everyone in the world's, well, in the US at least, is going to be pretty much a burger value expert because the volume of value training they have done. Now, if you don't want to get screwed, then you should take the same approach, spend a little time evaluating listing prices of that particular year, make, and model, in your general geography. This is called comping, finding comparable bikes and seeing what they are listed for. This only gives you an idea of what people think their bike is worth, not what people are willing to pay. Now I'm gonna drop a bomb on you guys as another portion of this value training, all right? You ready? The list price is not the value. I wanna give you a warning that is a pet peeve of mine, okay? I hear this shit all the time. Bike owner looks up what bikes are listed for. Assumes because they're listed for that price, that's the value.
Nope.
The bike is worth what a buyer is willing to pay, not what a seller asks. And often, you didn't get to see that number because the ad's gone. Now, just because someone lists a bike for 20K, no lowballers, I know what I got, you know the story, but it looks like a pile of dusty garbage thrown into various Rubbermaid bins, and it's covered in cobwebs and cat poo, and it's also been for sale for 420 days. Bro, fuck that shit. That information tells you right there, no one thinks it's worth 20K. So as you look at prices, pick some bikes and monitor them. See how quickly they sell at their listed prices. If the bike was listed for 5K and sold in one day, maybe it was underpriced or listed by a seller in distress. You know, I gotta make fucking rent, I lost my job, that kind of deal. Now, if the bike sold in a week or two, it was likely priced at a fair or condition-adjusted value. If it sold in more than 30 days, it is a safe bet. You got a stubborn or delusional seller who finally caved and took less than they wanted, which indicates the value is less than the listed price.
Okay. Deal.
Can we have the room, please?
Sellers, please, don't be the dude who thinks their bike's worth a damn fortune because you see people listing it for an outrageous price. The listings that were priced correctly go really fast. So when you go online, you may still see a bunch of overpriced ones and think you have a diamond. Buyers, don't fall for that shit, okay? Learn the actual value. The value of upgrades. So, what if the bike has a bunch of custom stuff done to it? It certainly becomes harder to determine value, but not that hard. You see some sick bobber, you can almost bet that it's slightly or seriously overpriced due to ownership bias. The more work and effort someone puts in their bike, they get all delusional about the value. They're thinking they have the chariot of the gods and often want way more than full market value. Don't be fooled by high listing prices. Read the description, shop for the parts on the internet that they claim, and add in reasonable labor costs for what was done. I'm gonna say a reasonable labor price would be $100 an hour for fabrication work, plus or minus 30 each hour, and $50 for stupid install shit like putting a new set of bars on. However, any idiot can kind of do that in their garage. Now, if you're having the Ghost of Indian Larry install something, yeah, it's gonna be like $2,000 for him to even look at your bike through the spirit realm. But if you have your buddy, maybe, who has a sweet flux core welder from Daddy's farm, he might do the work for a case of beer. You can also find a shop that wants $200 an hour to change a tire. Now, if you disagree with me, you're probably underage and poor and thus wrong. Stop being poor, okay? Fuck, I need to take my own advice there. But seriously, let me know if you think this shit's whack. What do you think the fair cost of labor is? Should I even do a video on how to vet a mechanic? Is that something you'd be interested in? Let me know in those comments. Now let's talk about condition-adjusted value. You'll find bikes in one of two conditions, running and non-running. I do something many of you might think is a total asshole move when buying non-running bikes. And maybe you'll unsubscribe when you find out what that is, but fuck you, I do what I want. More on what I want later. So to recap really quick, valuing the bike and how I determine what I'm willing to pay. I find the high end, I find the low end. I use the burger expert approach by becoming familiar with prices and values because remember, those are different. I watch how fast the bikes sell, I avoid believing list prices, and generally I stay away from bikes that have, you know, a crap load of custom work and paint done. I'm a particular case here with a specific skill set and I'm very critical of others' work too, but I'm trying to save you from making a bad decision. So you found the bike. Let's talk about negotiating that deal. I'm not a professional negotiator by any means, but here's what I do successfully and I recommend it. First, you gotta know what you want, what you will pay, and leave it at that. The person who makes the most offers will get the best price. The least patient will likely pay the most. I mean, obviously outside of dumb luck, okay? Now I mentioned earlier that I have a rule about non-running bikes. For this video, we're gonna assume you're looking at a bike that should be running. But if I happen to go see a bike and it does not run, here's what I do. I will not pay more than $500 for said bike, unless it's something I'm buying for specific parts, or I know the bike really well, and I have plans for a build. Now you might think I'm crazy here, but the reason I will only offer $500 for most non-running bikes is because there are way too many question marks in that thing. Is the entire engine a boat anchor? Is it seized? Did it run without oil? Was it run with no coolant? How long has it been in this non-running condition? You see what I mean? That list goes on and on and on. Now if I do decide to take this bike and it ends up being dead on arrival, then I can sell some of the parts and make my money back. But I'm not willing to gamble more than $500 for a non-running bike. And I have a high mechanical skill set. If I won't do it, you may not want to either. If you are not an experienced mechanic, I'd recommend against it. I honestly just don't like wasting my time unfucking other people's half-ass work. Now let's say you found cracks in the tires, they're from 1973, the front end wobbles when you ride, this is negotiating time. Now in this situation, I would pull up the price of new tires plus shipping, plus tubes, and I'm gonna add $45 for each tire install. Now let's say that comes to $400. The buyer's asking $5K, then say, here's what new tires are gonna cost me. Are you willing to accept $4,500, which gives me $100 to get the wobble diagnosed and the tires replaced? Buyer says no, say thank you for your time and leave. What happens more often is they call you a day later, an hour later, and saying they'll do it for $46. Stick to your guns, son. If I drive 2 hours to look at a bike and now I'm all the way home because they denied my offer, I'm not putting myself out again. I tell them, sure, I'll give you $4,500 for that bike, but it needs to be delivered. Unless you are happy and willing to go back out and pick it up. I wouldn't though. My final piece of advice here is to not get yourself into a sunk cost situation. Now, a sunk cost situation is gonna look like this for you. You've spent hours texting some guy with a bike. Then you drive 5 hours to go pick it up. At that point, you're willing to compromise your budget, your criteria, and you're gonna make a bad decision. And here's the really shitty part about this whole sunk cost situation. It leaves you with zero negotiating power. You've been sweet talking this guy for weeks. He knows you just drove 5 hours. He knows you probably don't want to go back empty-handed. So your negotiating power is shot to shit. So avoid getting yourself in a situation by not spending a ton of time on one bike. Just go make a bunch of offers. And remember, an offer is not a guarantee to buy. You're making an offer. If the guy says, sure, I'll take it, you can still say no. If the guy says no, you can still say, I have a counteroffer. Again, don't get caught up in the game of, I love this bike so much, I'm gonna dump all this fucking time and energy into it and then get screwed. So in summation, I'm just trying to get fair value for what I'm looking at. If there are issues I have to fix or repair, that reduces the cash price of that bike to me. My goal is to find a price I'm happy with paying for what I'm getting, from a very real and grounded perspective. Just please don't be the guy out there trying to negotiate his way into a $10,000 bike for $1,000. Now, real friends don't let friends get fucked by scammers. So do your homework. If you know someone who's looking at buying a used bike, share this with them and help them make smart decisions, unlike most of yours for the rest of your life.